Let's solve some more equations containing absolute value. Okay. When you look at an equation like this differs from the one that we were working on yesterday. The ones we were working on yesterday, when we simplified the equation, we ended up with just the variable equal to a number answer. So only inside the absolute value was just the letter, just the x or the b or the t. Over here, if you notice, a little different. I have stuff inside there with the absolute value. That makes us have to approach these problems a little bit differently. Because if on a problem like this, if x was alone inside that absolute value, we were able to use our common sense. I need something equal to x that when you take its absolute value gives me 2. And that answer was, well, 2 works and negative 2 works. Okay, but when I have a problem like this, okay, sometimes people are tempted to take this absolute value and break it up. See what I'm doing here? Absolutely illegal. You can't do that. You can't break it up. And so what we need to do in this case is realize if I have the absolute value of a quantity here, if I have the absolute value of a quantity, 3 plus x, I'm having used my eraser a lot already. Here we go. 3 plus x is equal to 2. It means I have a couple options. In order for this statement to be true, what I just circled here, 3 plus x, has to be equal to 2. That's one way. If 3 plus x equaled 2, okay, that would be one way that this would be a true statement. The other thing that could happen is that quantity in there could also be equal to negative 2. That would be legal because if this right here, if this quantity was equal to negative 2, when I would take its absolute value, it would make it positive 2 again. So whenever you have an absolute value problem where there's something inside with the x inside the absolute value, you're going to have to set up this situation of 2 different cases, which is what you saw me do right here. Okay, the first case is I take what's inside the absolute value and I set it equal to positive, whatever that answer is. In this case, it's 2. In my second case, I take whatever is in that absolute value and I set it equal to its opposite. So I set it equal to negative 2. And when I do this, I drop the absolute value signs. So I've got 2 cases here. So let's work about this one first. 3 add x is equal to 2. I'll subtract 3 from both sides. That makes 0. I'm left with x equal to negative 1. Great, there's one answer. And let's do this one. 3 add x is equal to negative 2. Subtract 3. I'm left with x equal negative 5. Great, there's my second answer. So I have 2 different answers here. X can be negative 1 and x can be negative 5. And I can write my answers like that, or I can also use set notation and put them like this, saying both of those are solutions to this equation up here. Okay, let's take a look at number 2 here. This one has a funky thing happen to it, and this is where you need to be smarter than the math process. Because on this problem right here, you could blindly go through this math process and completely not notice that there is a problem with what you're doing. So you can't just go through the motions when you're doing math. You have to pay attention to what's going on. Before I can do any of this, I need to get what's inside the absolute value. I need to get it isolated. I need to get it all by itself on one side of the equation sign, the equal sign. So I'm going to do that by subtracting 5 from both sides. I'm left with absolute value of k subtract 5. Okay, that made 0, is equal to negative 7. See, here's where you have to be smarter than the math process, because you could just keep going and do your 2 cases and blah, blah, blah. But the problem you have here is you have the absolute value of something is equal to a negative number. Can that ever happen? No. No, it cannot. And so guess what? On this problem, I don't have to do a single thing more. All I have to do is write no solution. But if you weren't paying attention and not keeping in the back of your head what absolute value really means, you could have broken this up into 2 cases. You could have gotten answers. They really wouldn't have made sense if you'd gone back and tried them in, but you could have gotten some answers and just moved through the problem. But you need to pay attention with absolute value to see if it's even possible to do the problem. In this case, it's not. I can't have absolute value equal to a negative answer. It will never happen. So that was an easy problem in that we didn't have to do much work. A difficult problem in that you had to be smart when you were thinking through it. Let's take a look at this one. I honestly can't remember how many of these can work out and how many it can't. So it may happen again. I'm going to rewrite my problem here because I like rewriting my problem. Okay, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, draw a line, do my answer. 3 times the absolute value of the quantity n subtract 2 is equal to 6. Okay, I need to get rid of my multiply by 3, so I'll do that by dividing by 3. That makes 1. I'm left with absolute value of n subtract 2 equals 2. Okay, I cannot break this n subtract 2 out of, there's nothing more I can do on this one. So this is why I've set up my 2 different cases. My first one says, well, either what's inside that absolute value is going to be equal to positive 2, or what's inside that absolute value is going to be equal to negative 2. One or the other. So I can solve from here. In this case, I'll add 2 to both sides, and I'll get n equals 4. And over here, I will add 2 to both sides, and I'll get n equals 0. Okay, both of those are answers to my solution. I could write it like that. I could write it like that, n equals 0 and 4. I could write it like this, my little brackets, 0 and 4. Lots of different ways to write the right answer. Last problem. Lots of steps on this one. Okay, ignore that one. I'm going to write it up here because I take up lots of rooms. Negative 2 times the quantity x subtract 1, absolute value of the quantity x subtract 1, all over 3 equals negative 6. Okay, we're going to get rid of the divide by 3 by a multiply by 3. Total legal move there. It's gone. I'm left with negative 2, absolute value of the quantity x minus 1 equals negative 18. Now, don't just look at this and be like, oh, absolute value on this side, negative on this side, no solutions. Okay, it's not going to happen in this case. Make sure you get it fully simplified first before you make that come to that conclusion. Because I can get rid of this multiply by negative 2 by dividing by negative 2. That makes a 1. I'm left with absolute value of x minus 1 equals positive 9. See, I'm okay now over here. This is doable. Break this up into my 2 cases. My first case, everything inside that absolute value is equal to positive 9. That's case number 1. Okay? Case number 2, everything involved inside the absolute value is equal to negative 9. That's case 2. Then we can solve them both. In this case, add 1, I get x equal to 10. Woohoo! Over here, add 1, I get x equal to negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8. There's my 2 answers right there. X equal to 10, x equal to negative 8. I also could write it like this, negative 8, 10. You don't need to write it both ways, okay? Just choose one way. You'll probably see me write it that way more often. The interactive lesson and the homework assignment might use that way if I'm remembering correctly. They're both right. You don't need to put your answer 3 different ways on your sheet like you see me do, but I'd like to show you. Okay, good luck on that one.